this, but so welcome on this beautiful fall day. Today we are celebrating health and longevity, and I find it fitting that today we have representatives from across the whole human lifespan with us to give our different perspectives on what it means to be healthy and what it means to live a good long life. So as we're gathered together in this space today, I invite you to come and worship and celebrate together. All right. And so now we invite you to rise in body or spirit and join voices while Elaine leads us in our opening hymn, Breathe In, Breathe Out. And please remember, if you do intend to sing, please wear a mask. And if you don't have one, just raise your hand and one of our ushers will get one for you.
At least, and join in. Breathe in and breathe out. Set the stage for Megan's message. Take it low. This is that. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Keep it going. Breathe out. Breathe. Now the next part. When I breathe in, I breathe in love. When I breathe in, I breathe out peace. Actually, it's the other way around. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe in, I breathe out love. Everybody join with me now. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. One more time. When I breathe in, good, keep it up. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Now choose a part. Either the breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, I breathe in, breathe in peace. Breathe in, I breathe out, I breathe out love. I hear it. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. And the last one. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Everybody keep going. When I breathe in, when I breathe out, I'll breathe out. Now deep breath in. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. One more time. Breathe in. Breathe out.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm sorry I missed it. If you could all please stand back up. Sorry. I forgot that I'm in charge now, and I missed the cue. And please join us as Lois and Doug light the chalice. For those of you who are new joining us today, you can follow along the words in your program. Want to blow it out and start again?
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Good morning. Whoever you are, however you identify, whomever you love, wherever you may be on your spiritual journey, please know that for this hour, you are part of this one gathered congregation, and you are welcome here. My name is Michael Gardner. I'm a worship associate in the church, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Megan Watts, one of our newer members of the church, to join in the pulpit this morning, as Catherine's taking one of her few days off. I first met Megan during fishermen's services this summer, where she was a delightful and regular attendee. It has been our practice for a number of years to feature one of the fishermen's services in church in the fall, and the service that Megan conducted last July seemed ideally suited to make the leap from the patio to the pulpit. We're very pleased that Megan agreed to lead the service today. If you're joining us today for the first time or haven't yet had the chance, we invite you to stand and introduce yourself. Not required, but we'd love the chance to say hello. Anybody like to let us know they're a first-time visitor?
My name is Rebecca Kramer. This is Ben and Noah Kramer.
Welcome. Yes, we had a great morning on fishermen's services when this family joined us this summer. Anybody who's a newcomer on Zoom who'd like to just say hello? If so, just please wave your hand vigorously and unmute yourself, and Dustin will give you a chance to say hello. Anybody on Zoom? And if you haven't been attending for long, we'd love you to come to coffee hour, which is reached through the door to my left, following the crowd after the postlude. And if you're new, or sort of, we encourage you to use one of these red cups so that other members of the congregation can have a chance to say hello. A few announcements. On October the 12th at 7 p.m., there will be a Zoom meeting of all committee chairs for questions C.J. Bray, who's here today. More information in the weekly UU News and the Bell Ringer about that. It will be a Zoom meeting starting at 7. On October 16th, after church, Catherine will be leading a program new to UU for persons who would like to learn more about the church and the faith. And on October 23rd, there will be a special training for those interested in becoming worship associates and for any current worship associates who'd like a refresher. See Liz Chrisman, who's the chair of worship and music, for details about that. That's on the 23rd. There's more information about all these programs and upcoming worship services in the UU News and Bell Ringer, and please check there for other announcements. It's my sad duty to inform you that Beth Walsh, the oldest daughter of our past minister, Robbie, and his then wife, Reed. Beth died this week. She was a longtime member of the Lexington UU Church and attended many services here when Robbie was with us. There will be a memorial service for her in Lexington this coming Saturday, October 15th at 2 p.m., with more details in the upcoming UU News. Catherine will also be speaking about Beth during next week's Sunday service. Our thoughts and prayers for Reed, her children, David and Nathaniel, and all of Beth's family. She was a wonderful person and will be deeply missed. Thanks so much to Caroline and Graham Mitchell for the wonderful flowers this morning.
And now I invite our children to come forward to the front. Actually, we have 4 kids over here already. Should we just all go over here today? Is that okay? All right. Yeah, okay. Ben says yes. All right, we'll all meet over here for a conversation with our young folks. No? There we go. Do you guys want to see me? Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. I don't know if I've met all of you yet, but it's nice to meet you if I haven't. Hi, I know you. Those are my kids and my niece and nephew over there, so they know me very well. So we're kind of split between people who know me and people who've never met me. All right, so usually Reverend Catherine does, a little conversation with you all. So I get to fill in and do that today, so I'm really excited. So today we're talking about longevity. So has anyone heard that word before? You know what that means? Okay, yeah, it's not a word we use very often, but today we're talking about that in terms of growing old and living a long life. So I thought it would be fun today if we talk about grandparents. Does anyone here, raise your hand if you have grandparents? Grandparents? All right, excellent, yeah. So does anyone want to tell me a little bit about what you love about your grandparents and spending time with them? Anyone want to volunteer?
May. They're really loving and caring.
They're loving and caring. Anyone else want to share? What's her name?
Scarlett. They're nice.
They're nice. They're nice. Okay. Anyone over here? My kids are being shy, which is a first. Okay. So they're loving, they're nice. Do your grandparents help you with anything? What kinds of things do your grandparents help you with? Do you want to share?
My grandma used to be a teacher, so she helps me with my homework.
Very nice. Anyone else? What do your grandparents help you with? Go ahead.
Sometimes my grandparents help me with my homework too.
Oh, we've got a lot of good grandparents going on here. All right. So I know I have to call on my parents when my kids have to do homework, right? All right. Anyone over here want to share? She says I ought to know. All right. So yeah, your grandparents are there to love you and help you, and whether it's with homework or maybe does anyone cook with their grandparents or no? You cook with cookies, yeah. Maybe they help you in the garden. They teach you how to grow things. Anyone garden with their grandparents? Yeah, okay. So grandparents help us in a lot of ways. They can teach us things. They can help us understand things that other people are teaching us. And did you all know that you actually help your grandparents too? Yeah, you do? So how do you help your grandparents?
I don't know.
You just know that you do help them. Oh, how do you help your grandparents, Ben?
Clean up.
Cleaning, yes, a very important skill.
I help her in the garden.
Gardening, yeah. Were you going to say something? No, okay.
Going on vacation.
You go on vacation. Yeah, that's really helpful. It's important to teach your grandparents to relax. Yeah. So you all help your grandparents too because you're probably pretty active, right? You have a lot of energy. Do you play around a lot and do a lot of stuff and don't rest a lot?
I made my grandma do an obstacle course and she was sweating and like cracked her back.
Okay. All right. Well, her grandma cracked her back, but she was sweating. That's a really important thing to put. So grandparents are really active when they play with you all, and they're teaching you things, and you're teaching them things. So it keeps their minds really active too. So you're helping your grandparents just as much as you're helping them. Do you have something you want to say? Go ahead.
Sometimes we like play with my grandpa in his basement. It's fun.
Yeah, and so you let your grandparents have a lot of fun, which is really important for health. Having fun is important for health. Isn't that a good thing to know? So, you should hopefully, feel very grateful towards your grandparents for helping you. And I think also your grandparents feel really grateful towards you for helping them a lot. So any grandparents in here who can attest to that? Yeah. That grandkids keep you probably more active than you would otherwise be. Yeah. All right. Do you want one last thing? What do you want to say? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for talking with me about this. I really had fun with you all. And so now, if we want to sing all the kids out, and Elaine, I think, is going to. Is she? Okay, there she is. Okay. Go down in peace. Go down in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere. Everywhere you go down peace, go down peace. May the spirit of love surround you. And now we will be doing the morning offering for the work of the church. Now I'd like to introduce Barbara Balboni, who will be offering this morning's reading, and she will be on Zoom. This morning's reading is called Ode to Longevity.
This morning's reading is Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long, happy life. To keep healthy and have a long life, eat just a little of everything with relish. Go to bed early, get up early, and then go out for a walk. We live each day with serenity, and we enjoy the journey. Keep healthy and have a long life. We get on well with all of our friends. Spring, summer, fall, winter, we happily enjoy all the seasons. The secret is to not get distracted by how old the fingers are. From the fingers to the head and back once again. If you keep on moving with your fingers working, 100 years will come to you.
When Barbara first read this poem, she characterized it as a calmer version of Keep on Truckin'. The interaction between holidays and culture can be strange and dynamic. Our Pilgrim forefathers didn't celebrate Christmas. The date wasn't in the Bible. And it took a Dickens short story and a 1832 poem by Clement Clark Moore to help give shape and form to the modern celebrations. Thanksgiving became a national holiday in 1863, in part to help boost morale and a patriotic spirit in the Civil War North. Later, Norman Rockwell showed us what the day was supposed to look like. In my school years, what we knew as Columbus Day was always observed on October 12th, and we did not get the day off from school. Instead, we learned about Columbus and his 3 ships, and maybe even a little bit about Queen Isabella. But we never talked about the Native Americans or the fate that awaited them. Later, there were efforts to recast the day as a celebration of Italian-American pride and accomplishment. In 2021, President Biden declared the second Monday of October Indigenous Persons Day, sharing the national holiday with Christopher Columbus. Earlier, Berkeley, California, and my old employer, the city of Cambridge, acted not to share, but to replace Columbus Day with the new holiday, in recognition of the history of suffering, death, and destruction from violence, European diseases, and enslavement. Perhaps the federal action, twinning the 2 holidays together, is most appropriate. For the histories of indigenous and European peoples are inextricably intertwined. What we used to unapologetically call the age of discovery sparked what became, for indigenous peoples, an age of conquest and near oblivion. With that context, please join in the spirit of prayer. Today, as we contemplate the blessings of longevity and our deep desire for both long and meaningful lives, may we also remember the many lives cut short, often brutally so, during the age of conquest a time when whole populations were displaced and replaced by the inexorable invasion moving westward from the Caribbean and the eastern seaboard of two great continents we now call the Americas, invasion ever westward to the Sunset Sea and beyond. Let us acknowledge that what was, for many of our ancestors, a glorious opportunity was for these peoples they replaced an inglorious portent of doom to life and culture. We ask for wisdom and guidance in helping us understand and come to terms with these entangled strands of history so that we may both honor the valor and vision that allowed those intrepid explorers to set sail in tiny ships across a vast ocean of which they knew little or nothing, while we also lament the avarice and cruelty some of them displayed once landing on these shores. For those of us who can trace our heritage back to European ancestors, this history of discovery and conquest, this history is our legacy, our inheritance, the coming to America, the ancient wellspring of our current well-being. Thus may we, in the days ahead, come to better understand these tainted sources of our material wealth and well-being, and find ways to better share our gifts with those who history and happenstance have displaced, and who are much less well off than we. May it be so. Amen.
Just a quick note about the piano interlude. I was challenged to find a piece that would suit this morning's sermon. This piece by Edvard Grieg, he titles Vanished Days or Vanishing Days. In a matter of a few minutes, you could imagine one's life passing before you, and in little vignettes, rapid fire between, the highs and lows of a very long life, well lived. I hope it suits the bill.
So, hello again. I'm really excited to be delivering today's sermon. As Michael mentioned, I delivered this this particular topic over the summer in a fisherman's service, and it's something that I just find so interesting. It's research on how to live a long and healthy life, which I think no matter what your age, I think we can agree that that's important. You know, when you're very young, you probably aren't thinking as much about that. I know that I wasn't, but I think as you kind of add years to your life, you're definitely thinking about that. So hopefully today you're going to come away with some really good tips to follow. So first, I want to thank the Worship and Music Committee for giving me the opportunity to come here and share this with you all, and to give a little background on why this particular topic is something that I wanted to talk about. So professionally, I've been a social worker for about 20 years, and recently I pivoted to become a health coach. And so while the two careers are slightly different, basically at the core of them, I help people change their behaviors. And what I have discovered is that in changing people's behaviors, usually what that entails is changing long-held beliefs. Things that we tell ourselves over and over and over again to be true, but then when we stop to question them, actually realize, oh, maybe that isn't so true, or maybe that was true at one point but isn't true now, or maybe there's a kernel of truth, but it's not the absolute truth. And I find this applies to pretty much everything, definitely a lot in health, but when it comes to today's topic, which is longevity and living long, I find that there is a commonly held belief that, you know, the older you get, it's just kind of inevitable that your body falls apart and you get sick, and that's kind of it, that it has to be this, like, you know, unpleasant experience. And that's not true. You know, I hope today I can convince you, hopefully that is your lived experience, you know, that the longer you've lived that way and can say for certain, you know, no, it's not true. But I also hope to convince you today that it doesn't have to be that way, and that hopefully you walk away knowing that if you've had some beliefs that maybe that is true as you get older, it doesn't have to be that way. So I myself have been a victim of this thought pattern. I remember I was kind of reminiscing about, you know, when did I think about getting old, and what did I think was an old age? And I was like, well, it depended on how old I was at the time, right? So when I was 12, so my parents are both professors, so we had a lot of, you know, 20 to 25-year-old students around. They would come to the house, we'd go out to dinner, you know, there were just graduate students around all the time. So I remember when I was like 12-ish thinking, wow, 25 is old. And it's like, God, like, can you imagine like getting a job and working and doing all those things? Like, that sounds horrible. Ugh, I don't want that. And then I turned 25 and I was like, this isn't old. Like, a 12-year-old me couldn't appreciate all of the things that 25-year-old me loved, like freedom, financial freedom, not having to go to your mom to say, can I go see this movie? You know, getting in your car and going somewhere, having, you know, the money to go out with your friends and meeting new people, having new experiences. So I remember being roughly 25 and thinking, I remember thinking that this was really old. What was I thinking then? 25 is not old. 40, that's old. And so now here I am at old. And now I'm looking back at my 25-year-old self and thinking, okay, I also didn't know what I was talking about then, because just as 12-year-old me couldn't appreciate what 25-year-olds experience, my 25-year-old self couldn't appreciate what being 40 would be like, and what that brings. It brings a certain freedom in an inner sense. You know, it's not hopping in your car and going wherever, because, you know, for those of you who've been 40 and if you have children, you don't get to do that. You go where, you know, the soccer game is or whatever it is. Wherever your children have to go is where you have to go. But it's a different kind of freedom that perhaps you have felt yourself, that maybe you don't care as much about other people's opinions, or maybe you do, but you let them go a little bit easier. You pursue things that make you happy. You pursue things that have meaning for you. And that's what I have found. And one of the things that really has struck me is my sense of purpose and responsibility to something larger than myself, which I definitely didn't have when I was 25. So now that I am re-examining what it means to be old, I no longer look at it as like, oh, I don't want to be that age. I actually look at it as a privilege to age, not as something that is going to be a nuisance. And luckily, research is backing this up. That, you know, the areas of the world where the people tend to live the longest are the areas of the world where people tend to value aging. That older people are valued for their wisdom, for everything they have to teach. I mean, our kids basically just backed me up down here today and said that you're all doing their homework for them. I mean, so it's really valued and revered. And so I think that it's important to spread, you know, this idea that if we have this belief that getting old means you have to be unhealthy, it's simply not true. And we're going to look at the areas of the world where people are living long lives and they're doing it in a healthy way, free of chronic illnesses that are really common in our society today, such as cancer, diabetes, dementia. So I want us to know what they're doing so we can copy them. So I'm going to be sharing today 9 lifestyle factors based on areas called the blue zones. And so here's the good news too. You're already doing one of them out of the 9. You're already doing one of them. So yay, you only have 8 more to go. And so, you know, hopefully you're leaving today with some ideas. So the research that I'm going to be presenting today is was done by a journalist named Dan Buettner in conjunction with National Geographic. He was a reporter for National Geographic for a very long time. And this has kind of been his life's work. And so in conjunction with Drs. Gianni Pez and Michael Poulain, they were tasked with reverse engineering age. So they identified these areas of the world where people were living longer than average. And there were pockets of them. It wasn't just one person. It was a significant, you know, saturation of people living into their 90s, 100s. And they were tasked with, you know, finding out, well, what are these people doing differently that is leading to these long and healthy lives? So what they did was they interviewed these older people, and they said, well, you know, how did you eat and how did you live most of your lives? Bring us through your life. What did you do most of the time? And based on this information, they were able to kind of boil it down to these 9 common factors. And so the factors are, and I'm going to go over each one of these, regular, easy movement, having a sense of purpose, eating a diet that is mostly, if not totally, plant-based, and consisting of real as opposed to processed foods, not eating too much, so really kind of being mindful of hunger and satiety cues, so not just kind of grazing throughout the day and not eating beyond the point of fullness on a regular basis. Michael just mentioned that Thanksgiving is around the corner, so that, you know, doesn't really count. It's just once a year. Finding ways to relax, drinking alcohol in moderation. I'm going to give a qualifying statement later on that one, though, so stay tuned. And that's meaning no more than 1 to 2 drinks of typically wine per day with a meal, and usually with friends. And then the last 3 of the 9 characteristics all have to do with social relationships. So having a strong commitment to family, having a strong social network that includes several close friends, and being part of a spiritual community. So by being here today, you're already participating in one. So even if it's just for this hour, you just tacked 1 hour onto your life. So congratulations. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these in a little bit more detail. So let's start first with regular, easy movement. So people in the blue zones, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention where these blue zones are. So they're Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, and Okinawa, Japan. In Okinawa, actually, since the introduction, ironically, of an American military base in the past century, their longevity has actually gone down because now they have a lot of fast food restaurants. But for the people who are older, the older generations living there, they stick to a more traditional way of life. So the younger generations are not actually experiencing the same longevity that the older generations are. So that's important to note. But those are the 5 blue zones I'm going to be referring to today. So in the blue zones, in these regions of the world, people do tend to live more traditional lives. They do a lot of their own work by hand. So for those of you who are here over the summer, so I have a cookbook from the blue zones, and it gives traditional recipes. But they hand make a lot of their food. So in Sardinia, they hand make pasta. In Nicoya, they grind corn to make tortillas. And as I've experienced from a recipe in my cookbook, in Ikaria, Greece, they make a traditional sourdough bread where you knead the bread for 20 minutes at least. And let me tell you, it is a workout. Like, my arms hurt after this. So imagine little, 90-year-old, grandmas, probably great grandmas, sitting there kneading their bread and, doing this on a regular basis. It is really a lot of work. But this is how they get a lot of their movement, by doing things like this, by putting the effort into making all the food themselves. They also grow a lot of their food themselves, so gardening provides an easy outlet for movement. But it's not strenuous, it takes muscle, it takes work, but it's not, pounding away at your joints or wearing and tearing down your muscles. And they also walk a lot. So in Sardinia, for instance, their streets are very steep mostly everywhere you go. So not only are they walking all the time, but they're going up and down hills. And so it's, if you want to go somewhere, you have to walk. The streets are really meant for people, not cars, unlike here where we're used to just getting a car and having to go somewhere. So it's like, if you want it, you got to go get it. So this all kind of comes together to promote regular, easy movement throughout their day. So if you can kind of think of ways to deconvenience your life a little bit, which is not advice that anyone wants to hear, sorry, but it just makes it easy. Instead of having to find time to go to the gym, saying, maybe instead of using the Roomba to vacuum my room, I'll go and vacuum it, or I'll sweep the floor, or I'll beat out the carpet, or I'll just go for a walk or something like that. So finding ways to kind of get nice, easy movement in your day. The next factor is having a sense of purpose. So people in the blue zones have a clear sense of why they are alive and what to do with their time. Our reading today was about the Japanese concept of ikigai, which is really meaning this sense of purpose, living every day with this is why I get out of bed, this is what I do. And that drives people in the blue zones who, are human. They have normal levels of stress. They go through things just the way everyone else does. It's not like they live these completely stress-free lives. But with a sense of purpose, it gets easier to say, okay, I can get through the stressful times because I know why I'm doing it. I know why I'm putting one foot in front of the other and continuing to go, even though things are, kind of not that great right now. So a strong sense of purpose really helps propel people forward regardless of kind of what's going on around them. It's also a major protective factor against cognitive decline. So for people who are retired and maybe had a lot of sense of purpose wrapped up in their career, finding a new kind of outlet for that sense of purpose, whether it's taking care of grandkids or kids or volunteering or being involved in a church or other religious community can provide a sense of purpose for people. Next up is relaxing. So like I just said, people in the blue zones are not superhuman. They experience stress just like the rest of us, but they really have it built into their daily schedule to relax. Whether that's napping, whether that is gardening, whether that's being with friends, whether that's cooking a meal with family, it doesn't really matter what the activity is, it's just that it's part of their daily lives. And so this may not be part of our culture quite so much, if anyone kind of can relate to that feeling that we have a go, go, go society. It's kind of like, stop and burn yourselves out. But I really think that sometimes we can undervalue the importance of relaxing. It really does have an impact on obviously our mental health, but also our physical health as well, that we are in a constant state of stress. Our bodies are inflamed, our bodies are not at their best, our immunity is compromised. And so it really is important for us to learn to relax. So whatever that means to you, if relaxing is gardening for you, or if it is, taking a nap, or if it's watching, reality TV, not that I do that, but it's whatever's relaxing to you. So it's personalized to everyone. So it's just really important that you do it on a daily basis and make it part of your life. Okay. So the next, I could talk about this forever, so I'm going to really try to make sure I don't go off on a lot of tangents. But the next factors are related to our diets and what we eat and how much we eat and things like that. So like I said, the blue zones are predominantly plant-based. It's not entirely plant-based, although in Loma Linda, California, there is, usually people are vegetarian or vegan. So that would be kind of the outlier. But for the other areas, it's a small amount of meat and a small amount of, or some cheese or something throughout the day. It's also really high quality, so grass-fed and it's organic and all these, fantastic things that we look for the labels on in the grocery store. But it's really not the main central part of their diet. Plants really are the focus in their diet, and plants are so important. I'm seeing a couple, yeah, that's me over here. Yeah, so this is something we can all relate to maybe, is that, our diet, our culture kind of has a meat or dairy or animal product centric kind of view of what a meal should look like. And we probably all, grew up, if not eating animal products, then certainly being surrounded by them and kind of being, having that be kind of the staple of a lot of meals. And so it's really reversed in the blue zones. And so there's a whole variety of reasons why plant-based food is really important for us, but fiber and antioxidants and minerals and vitamins, these are all protective against us, for helping our body eliminate waste, toxins, for helping to fight cancer, again, via antioxidants, reducing inflammation again. So I could go on and on and on, but I won't. So eat plants, eat vegetables, eat fruits, whole grains. This is what people in the blue zones are really basing their meals around. It's centered around the plants rather than the animals. Now, again, they do eat some animal products. In Ikaria, they do eat feta, or Sardinia, they eat, Parmesan and pecorino. And meat is usually reserved for like holidays and special occasions. So it's not saying that you have to be vegan or vegetarian if that's, kind of too much for you to think about. But it is kind of saying, try to think of the plant first and the animal somewhere, 4th or 5th on the list. This is also about not just eating plants, but eating real food. So food that is not meant to be stored on a shelf. It's meant for people to be consumed, in its close to natural state, soonish after picking it. And so that's when it's the most nutrient dense. So they're getting a more nutrient dense diet by having something growing in their backyard or going to the local farmer's market down the street. Eating real food that our body has evolved with, that your body recognizes as food, doesn't have chemicals and additives and dyes and flavorings and things like that, is a big difference between our dietary intake and the dietary intake of people in the blue zones. Okay. Next up, they eat less overall. So this is probably in large part due to the fact that if you have been to a restaurant in America, you will probably have noticed that the portion sizes are quite large, maybe more than we need from an energy consumption standpoint, but it's definitely, challenging. And I actually, so in my coaching practice, this is actually a big thing for people. They're like, I eat really well at home, but then I go to a restaurant or I order out with friends or I whatever, but it's always involved with going out or not having control over what you're making yourself. And then people chastise themselves and think they don't have enough willpower or it's them and they need to try it harder. I don't really think that's the case at all, because we're humans, we're animals. We're programmed to eat food that's in front of us because our brains still think that the next famine is around the corner. So it's not you. It's the amount of food that's being placed in front of you that is very large. So home cooking is something that is really common in blue zones. They don't eat out as much. They don't, get takeout a lot. A lot of it is home cooking that's shared with family and friends, making it social as well. And so that leads to kind of portion control, and also ingredient control. So restaurants add a lot of salt and sugar and other things to food. And when you're cooking at home, you get to know what's in your food. So you can control, the nutrients that are in it as well. So that is, that's just one of the factors that needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, so it's the morning, so let's talk about alcohol, right? It's 5 o'clock somewhere. So as I mentioned, 1 to 2 glasses of wine was found to be kind of common in the blue zones, particularly in Sardinia and Ikaria. They do tend to enjoy wine. It's part of the culture. So, this is not to say like if you don't drink, you should start drinking now so that you can be healthy. This is, kind of the commonality that they found, right? But it is in moderation, it's shared, it's with a meal, so that there are definite differences culturally between the way that some of these blue zones view alcohol versus the way that sometimes our culture views alcohol. But I think it's also important to balance with other information. So I recently heard this. It was on Instagram, but it was from a legitimate source. So it's this team of neurosurgeons named Aisha and Dean Shurzai, and they were presenting research on brain scans because they're neurosurgeons and they're interested in brain health. And so they kind of took this issue to task and said, well, is alcohol good for your brain or bad for your brain? And so what they pointed out was, the studies that have been done on, blue zones and Mediterranean diets, because, wine is part of their culture, lends the idea that alcohol is a health food. And what they point out is that it's not the alcohol that is making them healthy, it's that they are healthy in spite of drinking alcohol. So this is a quote from them, that it's not that you need to be drinking wine to be healthy. So don't start if you don't already. But it's that they live such healthy lives around the alcohol use that it provides a big buffer to them. So if you do consume alcohol, which is a very personal choice, then, just make sure that you're taking care of all those other areas of your life to kind of have that buffer around you. So, and also the resveratrol, if you've ever heard of that in red wine, it's a polyphenol that, has all these great health benefits and helps your heart and all. You can get it from grapes because it's from the skin of the grape. So if you don't drink wine, just eat some grapes. Okay. Finally, let's shift to the social components of a long and healthy life. So first is a strong commitment to family. So people in the blue zones tend to live very close to their families of origin, and older people tend to continue to take a very active role in the lives of caring for their grandchildren and helping out their children. It's not uncommon for 3 generations of family to live together, which, might sound great or bad depending on your feelings towards your family and how close you like to be to them. But this factor, as I kind of said before to our young people, really does help with particular cognitive health and keeping you on your toes and keeping you active when you're helping to care for children. So it really does provide a boost. So it doesn't mean you need to take care of grandkids if you don't live near your grandkids or whatever, but it's really about staying physically active and mentally engaged. So you can do this in other ways, of course, but so that's really the staying active and having that sense of purpose is really kind of at the core of that. Also having a close group of friends and having friends that live a healthy lifestyle, which if you live in the blue zones is obviously a lot easier because the healthy choice is kind of the only choice in some situations, but we do tend to have a monkey see, monkey do approach to things. So if your friends are healthy, you're more likely to be healthy. So if you can have someone who's going to go on the walk with you or going to have a nice meal that's healthy with you, then or be your sober buddy, on weekends or whatever it is, then that can really be helpful, and it can help you to kind of feel like you have this bond together as well. So a couple close friends who you can confide in and feel very close to. And finally, as we're shifting towards the end of this, I mentioned that participation in a spiritual community was a common factor. So there are many studies that demonstrate the protective factors of a spiritual practice on mental health, which therefore protects our physical health. But being part of a spiritual community also means you have a social outlet and you're connected to others by common values and beliefs. So it helps us in particular to not feel alone, especially with big, issues that are happening in the world. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed and like you have to, be faced with this all by yourself. But when you're in a spiritual community, and in particular this one that is so active in social justice and kind of living the word, not just saying it, it can be really helpful to not feel alone, not feeling like you're carrying the weight of everything on your shoulders. So it's really protective of our health. So those are all 9 factors. So I hope that you are leaving here. I hope that you, first of all, are already doing most of these things. But if you're not, then that's totally fine. It's, any time is a good time to start, and anything you can do to help yourself will have an impact. It's never too late. It's never too early. So I just hope that I get an invitation to your 100th birthdays. And yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh. Sorry, okay, so now I invite you to please rise, embody your spirit, and join us as we sing hymn number, I have too many papers up here, 398, which will be in your gray books. closing, if you've been coming the past few weeks, we've kind of been getting like a brief overview of Judaism. And so I thought it appropriate, given today's topic, to send you all off with a word that I and my children learned from their grandpa David, which means to life, and that's l'chaim. So l'chaim to you all. And we invite you to sit and listen to the postlude and then join us for coffee in the Harvey Assembly Hall afterward. Thank you.